Good afternoon, people in YouTube land. Are you a tourist looking to come to New Zealand? Are you going to drive in New Zealand? Are you here already and you're going to drive in New Zealand? Because driving in New Zealand is generally the best way to get around when you're talking about getting from point A to point B, seeing the sights. A lot of places are not accessible via public transport, bus, train, whatever. You've got to drive. So if you're going to drive, let's give you some practical driving advice from somebody that lives here. And I'm not going to be doing this video just from home. I'm actually doing a road trip today up to Nelson. So let's go. The first thing you need to be aware of is speed limits. All of the speed limits in New Zealand are signposted in kilometers per hour, not miles per hour. Your standard speed limit inside a city centre is 50 kilometers per hour. Sometimes you may find a 30 kilometers per hour speed limit, and especially around roadworks you'll see a 30 kilometers per hour speed limit. Within the city centres, sometimes you will see an increase to 60 or 70 or 80. And on the open road, it's 100. Now let's just talk for a quick moment about tolerance to these speed limits. Generally, the police have a tolerance of approximately 4 kilometers per hour over the speed limit. This is because we know that odometers don't always read the same. Quite a lot of them read optimistically. So if you're going to go a little bit over the speed limit, try not to go more than 4. Now, New Zealand roads can be dangerous. More on that later in the video. But if you habitually speed in New Zealand, one of 3 things is going to happen to you. Either you're going to get a speeding fine, or you're going to get a speeding fine and lose your license, or you're going to get into a crash and kill somebody, yourself or somebody else. So please don't speed in New Zealand. I've seen way too many accidents during my travels. And unfortunately, a lot of those accidents happen because of tourists not driving properly. Okay, we think it might be an accident. There's the police. See a little bit of broken glass on the ground. I'm just wondering if there's been an accident. Every single time I drive out rural New Zealand, I see an accident. I wasn't wrong! Wow, look at that. Wow. That's crazy. It's an unfortunate fact that tourists die on New Zealand roads every year. Oh, it's a head-on smash, it looks like. Looks like a head-on smash. Please be careful when you drive on New Zealand roads. They're not friendly to tourists. Please be careful if you drive on New Zealand roads. Thank you. Public safety announcement. Okay, this is really important. Let's talk for a moment about open road driving in New Zealand. If there is nothing else that us Kiwis want you to know, and this is why I'm putting this close to the beginning of this video, if there is one thing that we want you to know is that New Zealand roads are different from overseas roads. A lot of overseas roads are very wide, very straight, very flat, have lots of safety barriers on the outsides, have partition mediums and things in the middle, all these safety features to keep you safe. Lots of signage, you know, speed limit signage, that kind of thing. In New Zealand, we don't always have that. We do have some roads that are nice and flat and straight. Other roads are incredibly windy, and it's those really, really windy roads you've got to watch out for, especially in the South Island of New Zealand. Ground, in particular out in the countryside. You're going to see white lines and yellow lines in the center of the road. If there is a broken white line, that means you can overtake in any way. Now when you overtake, of course, you must have clear visibility on the other side of the road. There has to be clear enough for you to safely get past, obviously. If there is a solid yellow line on your side of the road, you cannot overtake. If there is a solid yellow line on the other side of the road, that side of the road, they cannot overtake. If there is a solid yellow line on both sides of the road, neither side can overtake. Okay, passing lanes. You're going to run into passing lanes. These are safe places to overtake, and you're going to need those safe places because you are going to constantly be stuck behind, trucks, caravans, horse floats, these type of things, and other slow drivers that are going to really slow you down on New Zealand roads. Passing lanes are your friend, so use passing lanes. You'll usually see an advisory sign that says passing lane 4 kilometers ahead, and then another one passing lane 2 kilometers ahead, and then another one passing lane 400 meters ahead. So if you're not passing, get into the left-hand lane. If you are passing, get into the right-hand lane. Important note, do not speed in passing lanes. A passing lane is not your justification. It is not your permission to speed up to 110, 120, 130. If a police officer sees you do this, you will get a speeding ticket. Passing lanes are designed for you to pass at 100 kilometers per hour the slow traffic, which is doing, say, 80 or 90. Do not speed in passing lanes. Occasionally in rural New Zealand, you may run into stock. When I say stock, I'm talking about sheep and cows. Rural New Zealand is, of course, agricultural, and stock are sometimes moved from one paddock to the other across roads. When you get to this, you'll see advisory signs which say stock ahead. So for goodness sake, slow down, because there's going to be stock on the road. And if you in fact have to come to a complete stop, which sometimes happens, then congratulations, you are now in the heart of rural New Zealand. You're having to stop for animals. So if you have to stop for animals, make sure you come to a complete stop. Watch what the farmer is doing. There will be a farmer who will be directing the animals one way or the other. He may direct you using hand signals to slowly drive through or to remain stationary. Follow whatever that farmer is telling you to do. Okay, let's talk about some of the road signs that you're going to see in New Zealand. Now, many of the road signs are very self-explanatory. Of course, they're designed that way so that they're easy to understand. Things like the rock fall sign, or the slippery when wet sign, or cattle signs when you see cattle crossings. So apart from your mandatory speed limit signs, you're going to see advisory signs around bends. These are signs which advise you what's a good speed to go around the bend. So you'll see a yellow sign coming up to the bend, and often you'll see a larger rectangular sign on the bend telling you go around this bend at this particular speed. But what are some other signs you might see? Well, you might see the no stopping sign. The no stopping sign is a blue circular sign with a red cross on it. And usually it will have no stopping for however many kilometers, say 2 kilometers, or it will say no stopping, and then you'll have to wait for the next no stopping sign where it will say no stopping ends. So of course, between those signs, don't stop. You'll also see road markings on the ground too. These are actually just the white arrows pointing, one way and pointing the other. You see these a lot around rural New Zealand, particularly around towns, because tourists stop in towns to, get food, go to the toilet, that sort of thing. And when they start up again, sometimes they forget which side of the road they're supposed to be on. Okay, one-lane bridges. You are going to run into one-lane bridges. A one-lane bridge is a bridge with one lane. Only one vehicle can cross at the same time. So there's a particular give way rule that you must obey. If the sign is white and the arrow is small, that means you must give way. If there's a vehicle approaching that bridge already or already on that bridge, you must stop and give way. If it's a blue sign and the arrow is large, then you have the right of way. However, you have the right of way assuming there is not a vehicle already on that bridge. So make sure you know your give way rules on one-way bridges. Keep an eye out for the big green signs. The big green signs are going to tell you where you need to go. Assuming that you're not using, you know, maps or GPS or something, you're simply going to be relying on your signs to get around. So these big green signs are going to advise you this is the turnoff that you want to take. You know, if you want to go this direction or if you want to, say, go straight. Watch for those big green signs. So some general advice. When you're driving in New Zealand, always stay to the left. We drive on the left-hand side of the road. Don't go on the other side of the road. Also, don't use your cell phone when you're driving. Don't look down to text. Don't hold it up to your hand making calls. If a police officer sees you do this, you'll get a ticket. Don't drink and drive. Don't take drugs and drive. Pretty obvious, that one, right? And probably the last thing I think that everyone should know, wear your seatbelt. That goes for everybody in the car, people in the front and people in the back. Always wear your seatbelt when driving in New Zealand. Hope this video was helpful. In the next video, I'm going to be telling you about parking your car in New Zealand. Because you know, you don't want to get towed, you don't want to get parking fines. So tune into the next video where we're talking about parking.